First of all, thank you for listening. I'm Monique and I want to share my story because I want to spread awareness because what happened to me could happen to anybody. And if I can help in some way by sharing my story, then that's an added bonus. So I will get straight into it. So, like I say, my name's Monique and I was 28 when I found out I was pregnant. It was a bit of a surprise, but after a few weeks, I did kind of come round to the idea and started embracing the fact that I was pregnant. I felt absolutely fine during the first trimester, no sickness, no nothing, to the extent where one time I was at the supermarket and I was walking down the alcohol aisle and realised, oops, can't drink, pregnant. So to that extent, I was feeling absolutely fine. I had my first scan and that was fine, 3 month scan, that was absolutely fine, no problems whatsoever. I had a Down syndrome test and again, that came out normal, no problems whatsoever. So moving forward, week 19, I had a private scan, like a gender reveal scan, and they were able to tell me that I was having a boy. I got to see all his limbs and I got to see him in like a 3D image of him. Nothing was flagged, everything was normal. So I was really excited at the prospect of having a boy. Like I was excited and happy at that stage. So when it got to the 20-week scan, I was kind of feeling like, oh, well, this is just procedure. I was excited to see my baby again because I'd seen him like the week before, so I just assumed that everything was okay. But that wasn't the case. So as the doctor was scanning me, he was a little bit quiet. I didn't make reference to it. I just kind of just laid there and I enjoyed the view. My son was moving around. I could hear his heartbeat. I saw all his limbs and everything. So I was a bit confused as to why the doctor was quiet, but again, I didn't say anything. So a few minutes later, he said that he was going to call somebody else to come and have another look at the baby. And at that point, I thought, okay, something is probably not quite right. But I try not to worry. I try to keep myself calm. The other doctor came in and he scanned me, and after he'd finished, he asked me to go and have a chat in another room. So at that point, I knew that there was something not quite right. Again, I was confused because I'd had the gender reveal scan and that hadn't picked up upon anything. So I was just going through the motions, I suppose. So I went into the room, and when I sat down and saw the look on their faces, I could tell that something wasn't quite right. So I tried to mentally prepare myself for like anything that they could tell me. As hard as it was, I tried. I mean, I did the best I could. So after a few minutes, the doctor looked at me and he said that my son was dangerously small to the extent where I could lose him at any moment and I might want to consider abortion. And at that point, when I heard the word abortion, it kind of shocked me into reality. And I felt like, is it really that bad where I have to consider abortion? But at that point, after seeing him on the screen, he was moving around. He seemed fine at that moment in time. I said, is he okay at the moment? Because he seems to have a lot of energy and everything. And they said, yes, he was. So at that point, I thought, well, abortion's not an option for me. So I asked what came next, and they referred me on to a specialist. I went to go and see the specialist, and again, he confirmed that he was dangerously small. I could lose him at any point, and he mentioned abortion again. He asked me if I wanted another Down syndrome test, which would involve me having a needle in my stomach. There was a 1% chance of miscarriage, and I declined because I felt like I'd already done a Down syndrome test. My baby was in proportion. There was no massive reason as to why I would want to risk putting him at harm again. So I declined. He explained that my baby had IUGR. He said that my placenta, due to my placenta being like a jelly-like, it wasn't like normal. He said that my placenta was giving him enough at that moment because he was small, but it was not, as he grows, he would not be able to, my placenta would not be able to give him what he needs, basically. So if he was to grow, then there was a risk that my placenta would just not be able to give him what he needed. I've got the notes in front of me. My son was 186 grams, that's 7 ounces. That was week 20. So that's how small he actually was. So he basically said that I need to take aspirin and basically hope for the best. So I went home feeling really disheartened and obviously upset, but I tried not to focus on how upset I was. I tried to stay positive. I thought about different options of what I could do because I felt like there must be more that I can do during this situation. Basically, I felt like I needed to do more than just take aspirin. So I started researching diets because I assumed if he was only getting a small amount for me, surely everything that he'd get, if I was to start a good diet, surely everything that he'd get would be goodness and that would give him the best opportunity. That was my logic behind it. So I researched diets and I came across the Brewer diet. It's a high protein diet. I remember I had to tick off about 30 different things throughout the day, and then I had to have extra protein every hour, and at night I had to have another like bit of protein, basically just once throughout the night. So it wasn't an easy diet, but it gave me something to focus on, and I felt like I was doing something. And over the weeks he was growing. He was growing a small amount, but he was still growing. So I was happy with that, and I felt like at least I was doing something. I forgot to mention, during the first appointment, the doctor said that he must make it to at least 24 weeks. And before any chance of any survival, like he thinks that I need to make it, the baby has to make it to at least 24 weeks before he can give like a C-section, and there'd be any chance of him coming out like, well, maybe not okay, but for the best chance. So I was just focusing on that 24 weeks. I just continued with the diet. So it got to week 24 and he was active. He was fine. He was 339 grams at that point. And he must have told me before, but this was the first time I remember him telling me that he must be 500 grams at least to make for any chance of survival. And at this point, he was 339 grams. So I left that appointment feeling quite disheartened. I started questioning myself, thinking, is this diet working? Should I just give up? But I just thought to myself, I'll think on it when I get home and just decide from then. So as I was leaving the hospital, I saw a white van with the name Caden. And Caden was one of the names I'd selected for my son. So I thought it was quite odd that I'd seen that, but I just kind of like laughed it off. And within a few seconds, a woman was on the phone, and as she walked past me, she said 500. So within about 30 seconds of leaving the hospital, after the doctor had just told me that he needs to make it to 500 grams, I'd seen Caden 500. A few seconds after that, my cousin noticed a sign saying truth. So within a minute, I'd seen Caden 500 truth. And for me, that was a sign that I needed to continue what I was doing. So I did. I continued with the diet. I'm still to this day, don't know if that's the reason why he grew, but in my head, I felt like I was doing something, so it really helped me. I continued with the diet. He continued to grow. He did get past the 500 grams stage. So moving forward to week 29, it was the Thursday, And I remember he'd grown, he was like 600 and something grams, and he was moving around a lot, really active. And I was really happy. I felt really happy. The doctor said that because I'd had steroid injections prior to that, it gave him a bit of a boost. So he was happy with the way he was, basically. But he still wanted to see me on the Sunday. Now I was thinking to myself, he's doing so well, like, why do I need to come in on the Sunday? I just was getting bored at that point of scan after scan after scan. I was just getting a bit fed up of it, but I knew it was for the best. So I just took the information on board and went home. So the Saturday came and I'd never been so tired in my life. I literally slept all day. I only woke up to eat, and I can't remember noticing the movements declining at that rate, because at that stage, because I was so tired. I was just focusing on sleeping. I didn't have time to sleeping and eating. I didn't really have time to really think about how the movements were and things like that. So I just slept through most of Saturday. The Sunday morning came and I had noticed that the movements had actually declined. I was really worried. I didn't tell anybody, but I was worried. But I thought to myself, well, I'm going to the hospital today, so they'll have a chance to see him and everything. I'll have a chance to see him. And I was very thankful for that appointment that I initially didn't really want to go to. So I got to the hospital and the ward wasn't open. So I had to look for somebody, and they eventually got a doctor, and the doctor scanned me, and he wasn't as active as he usually was. So at that point, I was terrified, to be honest. The doctor asked me if I'd felt him move, and she looked a little bit concerned. And at that point, I was really scared, but I didn't want to admit that the movements had slowed down at that point. I really don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want to hear the worst, or I don't know. But because I had felt him move prior to the appointment, just the once, but I'd felt him, I actually just said yes. So she said, after that, she said that she was getting a little bit concerned. So he would have to come out tomorrow, like the day after, basically. So I hadn't really prepared anything for the hospital or anything. I hadn't bought anything for myself. I bought nothing for him besides a hat, because I saw that premature babies wore hats. But other than that, I'd bought nothing for myself. So after the hospital, I rushed to the shops to get everything that I needed, got myself prepared, and I think I'm going to leave it there. If you were interested in hearing some more of my story, I'm going to upload part 2 very shortly. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like what you hear. And again, I appreciate you listening to my story. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them. All right, thank you very much for listening again. Thank you.